Hi, everyone. This is Sylvia from the Fiat-proof podcast. Yes, you're hearing right. I've changed the name from Unhamster Wheel to Fiat-proof because this is all about working on your mental hamster wheels, which is now transitioning into fiat-proofing your mind, fiat-proofing your economics, and fiat-proofing your education. And today I have a very, very nice guest that I'm looking forward to chatting to. Her name is Kathleen, and she contacted me because her husband sent her our unschooling panel from the Bitcoin conference. And she really encouraged me to continue with what I'm doing because she has unschooled her two sons who are now 21 and 27, correct?
I wish 27 and 29.
Oh, okay, sorry, I got that
That's
right.
okay.
So,
I may
okay,
have lied to appear younger. No.
our late 20s. So yeah, amazing because I have so many young families on my list
Mhm.
as our followers because when your kids are young and you think you've gone through the schooling system, you think that's the way to go, but then you have some concerns about both schooling system and unschooling. So
Yeah.
talking to you is really going to help my listeners to
Yeah.
answer some of their questions, maybe their fears and concerns.
Mhm.
I emailed my list saying that I'm going to be talking to you, and I have a couple of questions written down. So first of all,
Sure.
thank you so much, Kathleen, for coming on and being on my podcast.
No problem. No problem. And I totally get where you guys are because I remember that day when my husband came home. I was pregnant. My husband was in university. I had finished my degree. And he said, "Oh, I met this amazing family." He was doing residency. He's an optometrist, and he said, "This guy, he homeschools his kids." And I said, "What a crazy idea!" And he said, "No, no, listen, their cat died, and they wanted to know how the cat died, so they did an autopsy on the cat." I remember 8 months pregnant, the breadwinner at this point, and I'm looking at my husband like, this is not going to happen. And I'm just going to jump to that's pretty much what my reaction was when he said, "I'm going to wire some money to some random bank account in Japan and buy this cryptocurrency called Bitcoin." And I was like, "What? No." So when I saw the two worlds merge, I understand.
Yeah, yeah, that's another thing that we want to talk about. How do unschooling and Bitcoin come together? Because I started off as a place to be is for unschoolers, but we are
Mhm.
Bitcoiners and all the
Yeah,
founding families are Bitcoiners. And now we have
right.
a lot more Bitcoin families. So I want to help the unschoolers understand Bitcoin and how it goes
Mhm.
together, like hand in hand with unschooling. And
Right.
I want the Bitcoiners to understand why it wouldn't make sense to send their kids to school if they don't like the
Sure.
government controlling their money.
Yeah,
Why would
no,
you
no,
let
it
the
totally
government
makes
control
sense.
your kids' education or even their future? Because they're basically giving them away for between 6 and 10 hours a day,
Yeah,
controlling their kids, and that's
yeah,
gonna be the basis for the rest of their lives unless they do a lot of work on themselves to undo the damage.
yeah.
And what was your upbringing like? I mean, you heard of unschooling when you were pregnant.
Yes. Well, that's very interesting because my parents are both school teachers. So my dad my dad is Scottish, my mom is Irish. I was born in England, and my parents did the crazy thing of saying, "We want to go to Canada. This sounds awesome." So they brought me to Canada, and my dad was a school teacher, and my mom stayed at home. And then as we got older, she wanted to do something more, so she went back to university and became a school teacher as well. So both of my parents, my dad has 3 degrees, one of which is in Latin. And my mom is more of a practical person, but she was teaching vocational education. So she was teaching hairdressing. And she's an actually really interesting example in that she left school when she was 15 years old and then was assistant teaching in the school. And they said, "Oh, the teacher's leaving, you should take over. You should be the teacher." And my mom said, "Okay, well." And they said, "Do you have a degree?" And she said, "No." And they said, "Oh, well, you're going to have to get a degree to be the teacher, to do the job that you've been doing for 9 years. And she said, okay, well, guess what? She didn't have a high school diploma and she didn't have any proof. So trying to get her into university at 50 years of age to go back to, so she did, she went to school for 2 years, um, and took the very bare minimum she could and went back and taught as a certified university educated high school teacher, um, doing the exact same job. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
And so I think, as a family, we were all like, why are you jumping through this hoop to get this piece of paper to do the job you've already done?
Yeah.
So that was all as I was meeting my husband, and we were both in university. I was going to go to law school. He was going to go to optometry school, and we were very education focused. So when we meet people, when we first started homeschooling and unschooling, people were shocked. And Dennis would have patients go, oh, which one of your kids is going to take over your practice? And he was like, oh, neither. They don't go to school. um so I think that I answered your question of where we came from.
Yeah. Wow. Let me just look at my list of questions.
Sure.
So my husband, for example, he
Hmm.
would like to know, how do your sons, like if you look at them through the years, compared to other kids who did go to school? Like, did you see like at a certain age there was a difference, or now that they're, grown in the late
I
20s?
I saw a difference every step of the way.
Mhm.
And I think I just want to say one more thing that happened. So
Yeah.
when my husband, came up with this brilliant idea to homeschool, obviously I was pregnant, and then, we had another child. So now we had the two, and my older son was on the waiting list for this very prestigious, wonderful kindergarten. And my husband very patiently was like, you won't do it. You won't do it. You won't do it. And I was like, yes, I will. Yes, I will. And so I got the call from the school to say, oh, you've been accepted. Yay. And that day I was having lunch with a woman that I didn't know. And she said, we were talking, and she said, well, if you're thinking about homeschooling, why are you putting him in this school? And I said, oh, well, I'm going to put him in, and then, we'll see how it goes. And then I'll pull him out if I don't like it. And she said, can I just give you one piece of advice? She said, why not start out the way you intend to go? And if that doesn't work out, put him in school. And I thought, did my husband pay you to tell me that? And she said, no. And so I did. And so I made that call, and it was very emotional for me because this was making a choice. Although my husband and I very much co-parent, very much a collaborative parenting, we were starting our own business at the time, our own practice. And so I knew that I wasn't going to carry on with my epic career. There was going to be some adjustments. And in saying that, my husband also curtailed his career efforts. So it was a two-parent situation. But I realized that if you are at all considering uh, this is the way to start,
Mhm.
because you can put them in school at any time.
Yeah.
It is a little more challenging to do it the other way because I know you've heard this. The world tells you they have to go to school,
Mhm.
and they don't.
Yeah.
So I'm not answering your question. I will
No,
answer your question. I'm a talkative person.
I like that.
So every step of the way, I noticed a difference. And where I would say when they were younger, what I noticed for individually, my children were very self determined. They were very confident. They were very aware of what they wanted and what they didn't want. They were very focused. They were very in love with learning. I didn't tell them what they had to do. I was manipulative. So I left out books that I wanted them to read. And my kids tell this great story that because my husband and I were both working while we were unschooling our kids. Uh, if they were playing, I didn't interrupt them. If they were doing something constructive, like out building something, doing whatever, so they would literally argue, get in a fight, and then be like at 5 and 3 years old, if we get caught arguing, mommy's going to come in and give us work to do. So let's collaborate and figure out how we can resolve our issues. So that was one thing I really noticed was they worked through their own crap.
Yeah.
With and I one of my friends, colleagues, I guess her name is Linda Clement, and she is kind of like a mentor when my kids were younger because her kids were older, and she practiced what she called benign neglect. So in other words, if there was no harm being done,
Mhm.
she would just let them play and or they Brendan set up the 12 labors of Hercules in the backyard for Lachlan to compete because Brendan was the reader, the scholar, and Lachlan was more the athlete. And so their worlds, they helped one another throughout their whole lives. In fact, just yesterday, Lachlan was taping an audition for Brendan, and Brendan's cleaning his apartment, and they don't live together, but they're just visiting in Toronto. So for me, the younger in the teen years, oh my gosh, like such a difference. um we gave our kids very long rope, so this idea that, oh, you must be helicopter parents because your kids tell you everything, and it's like, no, I pretty much tell my husband everything. My husband, we just have these family conversations where, and sometimes it's really awkward because some of the questions your teenage kids ask you, you're like, I don't really want to answer that question, but we did, and
Yeah.
so then I'm going to get to the teen years. It was like, oh my gosh, because it was all hands on deck. Then it became a more like, this is a team, everybody's responsible. So I have a meeting, dad's got a deadline, who's going to pick up? And so all four of us, Brendan did a TV show, so we moved to Vancouver, and we all moved, and Dennis would fly back to his business, but everybody was moving. Like there was no competition, there was no fighting for airspace in our
Mhm.
family. It was like, this person needs time, so how are the other three of us going to work together to help that person?
Yeah.
But it was reciprocated, right?
Mhm.
So then now to adults, um I mean, I don't even I don't want to comment on other people's 20 somethings, but my kids are motivated, they're drug free, they're not addicted to anything except maybe their phone, like I am, haha. But they're very conscious livers. They're very make conscious decisions. They are both pursuing their passion. My younger son is a high performance cheerleading coach. He was on the Canadian national team. He's an absolute rabid Bitcoiner. My older son is an actor. He lives in New York, LA, London. He has all that glamorous lifestyle, and then he doesn't for a year. And what I will say about him, living in that Hollywood world of desperation and fakery, he doesn't have that. He's like, today I'm working, today I'm not. Oh, this person recognized me. Oh, that person didn't. He's completely um fame proofed, to say fiat proof.
Uh-huh.
He's fame proofed in that he is doing what he loves,
Yeah.
and they're both empathetic and compassionate, and yeah.
Amazing. That is like 100%. Like, I mean, my kids are 4 and 7, but that's
Yeah.
100% how we're doing it.
Yeah.
And I hope it's going to continue like your story.
Hmm.
I mean, no story is the same, but and I do sometimes have a little concern here and there, but they get less and less over time. What were some concerns that you had over the years, and how did you learn from them?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest concern I had with Lachlan. So I had Brendan, who's my older son. He was, 2, 3, 4, 5, talking to me about Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus and whether I thought it was a revenge play, and wondering if there was a way Romeo and Juliet could have avoided killing themselves or whatever.
Mhm.
And so he was like, a sponge of soaking up books. And then I had Lachlan, who did not read until he was probably 8 or 9 years old. So come back, two parents, doctor husband. I'm, an educated businesswoman. And I got an 8-year-old, 7, 8-year-old who's not really reading. And everybody's like, he's never going to read. He's never going to read. So that was a challenge to stand behind our belief
Mm-hmm.
that children eventually learn to read. And then you hear this, oh, but maybe he's dyslexic, maybe he's got this disorder and that
Oh my
disorder
God.
and this disorder. And I thought, okay, and the one biggest, largest, massive piece of advice, I'm not an advice giver unless I'm asked, but I feel that as the life givers of these young people, there is something in your soul that tells you what is right. And you have to listen to it, and you have to drown out all the noise of people telling you what's best for your kids. Obviously, there are situations where people need to intervene when parents are not providing, they don't have their kids' best interests at heart. But in the case of you,
Mhm.
obviously, you feel what's right. And I knew he was going to read. And so we would, work with him, give him like, still Shakespeare, because he wanted to be able to converse with his brother, but manga Shakespeare, so it was like super easy to read. And eventually the external world, he developed the desire to read because he wanted to read, and he wanted to know what was in the ingredients because he's a chef. So he wanted to. So when the universe dictated to him that he needed to read, he read.
Mhm.
And it's very difficult when you compare yourself to other people's kids, and when you look at the benchmarks and the milestones, and it
Mhm.
starts right at birth. I mean, oh, are they turning over? Are they eating solids? Are
Yeah.
they sleeping through the night? And it's all this blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like you say, fiat proofing your kids. It's also competition proofing your
Mhm.
family, so that you see that this little gift that you've been given is not in competition with anyone else. But that doesn't mean that your kids aren't striving. I mean, my son's was on the Canadian national team.
Mhm.
He's a competitor. My other son is competing daily for, parts against,
Patience.
Timothy Chalamet. Haha. It's challenging, right? But because your home, your safe place, isn't competitive, doesn't take away the drive to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, so going back to Lachlan and not reading, that was one of my first challenges. Would have been my first challenge with him, was trusting
Mhm.
that when he saw value in reading, that he would read. And now, he's the one who has read every Bitcoin book on the planet. And
Yeah.
we laugh because we're like, this was our, what I would say, non-academic kid who has found his absolute passion in the Bitcoin space. So
Wow.
he's, sending us briefs on articles and everything. So again, trusting when you meet those challenges and reaching out to other parents who've been through what you've been through. I had an amazing supportive network of unschoolers who were all like, my kid didn't read till they were not, don't worry about it. And
Mhm.
so plugging into people who reassure, again, it can become quite cult-like when you only surround yourself with people who are
Yeah.
unschoolers and only surround yourself with people who are Bitcoiners. But sometimes those are the people that you resonate with, right?
Yeah.
And again, as long as we're all not all drinking Kool-Aid in like in Guyana, it's good to be in a group of like-minded
Mhm.
people with, a little bit of external
Yeah.
information peppered in.
Yeah. Just choose, you know, take from the people, whoever
Yeah,
it is, gurus,
yeah,
even experts, or even if it's an
hmm,
authority, what you can learn from, and the rest
yeah,
ditching.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Wow, I love this. Um, so obviously you were an unschooler before you came Bitcoiners, and how did this merge? I can kind of know now that you
yeah.
didn't, read them Bitcoin stories, bedtime stories or something. You just
No,
let them be part of your life, your world, of the family, your own community,
yeah.
and probably that's how they got into it. But how did this go over from unschooling
Well,
into Bitcoin for your kids?
my husband and I were talking about this because my husband said, look, I did three crazy things in my life, and they were the smartest things I ever did. One, he convinced me to marry him because I was like, that's crazy. Two, he convinced us to be a homeschooling family.
Yeah.
That was crazy. And he convinced us to be Bitcoiners,
Oh,
which was also
amazing.
crazy. Yeah. The rest of it is all my fault, but he takes responsibility for those three big things. So how we, and like I said, I think I was telling you before we got online, I cried when Dennis sent me that. I'm going to get emotional now. When he sent me that Madeira chat with the four
Mm.
of you up, it was four of you, I think. I was just like, I got tingles. And I said, Dennis, I never made the connection. Never, never, never. And he said, neither did I. And it was just like this epiphany of tingles of thinking the whole direction that we've been going in since we got married has been marching towards Bitcoin, marching towards unschooling. So how we got into Bitcoin was I don't remember specifically where Dennis heard about it, but he is very much, managing our portfolio. He would do, we would talk together and we would have little family meetings again with our kids of like,
Mhm.
and so step back. So for social responsibility, so we get a lot of all our lives. Can you donate to this? Can you help with this? Can you do this? And I said, absolutely. Give us your information. We'll sit down as a family. So we would sit down as a family and review every request for funding. Even when we had our monthly ability to give was $25, we would divvy that $25 up in a collaborative way where everybody in the family could give their input. So sometimes that $20 went to a friend of Brendan's who couldn't afford to go see a theater show, and that would go that way. Or sometimes it went to, we're very involved in One International, which is a school in India. My kids have grown up being very involved in One International. They all both want to go and work there. This is an amazing school that one of my friend's daughters started in India. And so the money would divvy up all over the place.
Mm.
So Bitcoin became a natural conversation. Hey kids, daddy's wiring money to some crazy place in Japan, and we may never see that money again. Are we all comfortable with that? And Lachlan, don't remember him being as involved in the discussion about Bitcoin. And I think I'm not going to be able to answer that question properly because I don't remember
Yeah.
how the kids got involved. But I do remember Dennis talking about Bitcoin. And then, of course, I read the white paper, and I worked at IBM 30 years ago. So I had some computer understanding. And so he started talking about it. I said, okay, well, how legit is this? And of course, being super concerned about, how is this going to open us up to a hack, or you're never going to see that money again.
Mhm.
And to slowly, becoming educated ourselves, meeting other Bitcoiners, following. I mean, this was quite a few, maybe couldn't even tell you how many years ago it was. But because my husband became a bit of a Bitcoin evangelist, it naturally became part of our discussion. But the kids were older and maybe not even living with us at the time. But then all of a sudden, Lachlan went to a Bitcoin meetup with Greg Boss, who's
Mhm.
a Canadian Bitcoiner. And Lachlan got to meet him. And he sent me this picture, and that was it. He was just like, this is, and he, I bet, made the connection to unschooling, but just didn't articulate it in the
Yeah.
same way. So so that's a very long way of answering that. It just felt right. It just felt like to pull, because we already kind of controlled our finances. We reluctantly have someone who manages a pool of stuff, but Dennis loved it. And Dennis, as an optometrist, this sparked an enormous amount of joy in him, was talking about money and how the system works. And of course, me being the reader, I read, Lynn Alden's book and Check Your Financial Privilege. I read them all and he listens to the podcasts about them. And it just became a family conversation. So then Lachlan got involved. And of course, because the way our family works, Lachlan's like, well, I'm going to buy, $500 of Bitcoin, and I'm buying $500 for Brendan because he needs to have Bitcoin too. So Brendan's kind of the one like, woohoo, my Bitcoin's going up, but he doesn't know anything about it and doesn't care. And in his mind, he's like, can Bitcoin fund my movie? Because he's also a writer. So we're like, yes, it can. So
what a great story. I mean, I have a question from Mohammed. I would love to hear about individual Bitcoiners' education journey and what they liked and disliked about it. Like you've explained it beautifully. It's really just a family living together and doing what they love.
Yeah.
And I love that the term you use, you're the life givers. You don't even say parents. And
No.
I just rewrote our philosophy on our website. And I say that, you have given birth to 3 human beings.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, you kind of became the unsolicited CEO or, whatever parents think they need to control their kids or they need to teach them and they need to do certain things.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that term, life givers. So
Well,
coming back, yeah.
You didn't teach them to breathe, and they managed to figure that out. I don't think you taught them to walk, and you didn't teach them to swallow. So why do we think that we have to teach them? I mean, the one thing I want to say too is you don't want to control your child. You want them to control themselves.
Yes.
So that because one day one's going to be in Australia and one's going to be in London, they need to be able to control themselves. They can't go, oh, my mom's not here, so I don't know if I should eat, or I don't know if I should do crack. Like you need them from like little age to be self-determined. But I will tell you how that backfires. Okay. So Lachlan, my youngest, is his passion is cooking and Bitcoin, but cooking. And so when he was young, he would do a lot of the cooking and loved it. And so our rule, we did have some rules, was 2 things. He, the chef, was a picky eater. And so I would always say, you are perfectly free to choose not to eat one thing on your plate, but one. And then I would always purposefully put 2 things I knew he didn't really like. This is when he was really little, and we were trying to encourage him developing his palate. So that was a great tool. But the other one was, if you don't like a food, because when you're young, science has proven that your palate is changing, you just need to try it every 6 months and make sure that you still don't like it. No problem. Except I don't like onions. And so when Lachlan started cooking, he would cook with onion. I'd go, I don't like onion. Why are you doing that? Well, Mom, it's been 6 months since I cooked with onions, and your palate may still be evolving even at your age. So you're going to try it with onion. And I remember thinking, I wish I had been that parent who just told their kids what to do and got away with everything.
So great.
Yeah.
I get back at you.
So did I answer Mohammed's question?
Yes, I think this is the last part of his question. What did you like and dislike about it? What's something you didn't like about it?
About homeschooling?
Unschooling, yeah.
Unschooling. I think when I was listening to, and I forget the name of the person who was on your podcast, and she talked about personal space when they were traveling. And I thought, did we have a personal space issue? And I'll say that that would not be one of my biggest concerns, because as your kids get older, they too want personal space. And so obviously we're not traveling around in a van. But we did live in an apartment in Vancouver when Brendan was there, and Dennis would come back and forth. So it was a very small little space. But I think, talking about that, okay, what are you guys going to do? We all need to have a little bit of space. It comes naturally. So I think what I didn't like was, yeah, I'll tell you what I didn't like. I didn't like some of the bureaucracy that came from homeschoolers trying to organize um, structure around it, and then just getting so caught up with that bureaucracy and forgetting that the reason we were here was to homeschool, unschool, whatever our kids. And so sometimes you had that, um, there was some toxic parenting behavior, that not to the kids, but
Mhm.
between the parents.
Yeah.
And I think one of my friends, Bridget, she said to me, well, the problem with unschoolers is they all think they know the best, which they do for their kids. But sometimes when you have like a parenting group, it would be fine when it was a parenting group, but when you became a society and you had government reporting, or you had a president and a treasurer and all that, there just seemed to be some pointless fighting. So I think that was my biggest frustration. I've sat on a board of directors I just came off of my last one a year ago, for probably 30 years, various charities, various organizations. And so obviously took, a position of leadership within the homeschooling community. And sometimes I thought, yeah, like, you want to believe the best with everybody, but sometimes people would just get caught up in the politics and bureaucracy of, meetings and structure. And it was like, we're unschoolers. Why are we doing
Yeah.
this? Like, I get that we need to, if we're all going to pay $1, someone needs to manage the $20, but we don't need all this
Hmm.
bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And so then those who chose to do that, it's like, well, you're spending all this time volunteering on the project rather than hanging out with your kids.
Yeah.
And the kids weren't involved. That was the other thing. Like, bring the kids in, let them,
Yeah.
like Summerhill, let them make the decisions, and all sit over in the corner and have a cup of tea or a
Wow.
glass of wine.
So it's not even anything to do with your family. It's something external. Wow, that's great.
No, no, I mean, I think you're more aware of what's going on with your kids. So sometimes you're like, do I really care that Johnny didn't talk to Sally for 5 minutes? So,
Yeah.
there are times where things that typical kids who are at school wouldn't even bother their parents with. Sometimes you're like listening to
Mhm.
but I mean, that's your choice, right? You can say, you know what? I'm not really interested in this
Yeah,
right now.
don't mind
Sorry.
this.
Just like I'm not telling you about my neighbor whose dog keeps barking or whatever, So
Yeah. Yeah, the benign neglect, like your friend calls it. I like
yeah,
that too, that term.
I love it. It's
Um, I have a question written down. This is my question. Like, this is now, I'm sorry to every other guest, but this is now my new favorite episode, because I think you're going to inspire so many people to start unschooling or to make them
yeah,
feel better about their choice.
yeah,
And my question I had written down was, have you ever, I'm very sure you have, inspired somebody to start unschooling their kids?
yeah. Definitely. And actually, so has my husband, because he has people who come in every day and say, oh, so your kid's a doctor, like I was telling you. And he will literally, and I think it's a bit dramatic, but he'll go, what? You put your kids in school? Are you crazy? That's so much work. And so I think that's really funny. So then what he does is he converts them in his chair, and then he sends them my way. He says,
Yeah.
talk to my wife. You'll never put your kid in school again. And I'll be honest. Yes, I have spent, we need to come up with an orange pill word for
Green pill.
unschooling,
We're
like
calling it green pilling.
I'm going to use that now. So I have green pilled a lot of people.
Great.
Um, and, uh, and I think when to me, if you really think about it, you can't put your kid in school. Now, there are situations where you have to, and I have been there are situations where people have said, look, I need, for maybe they're in a co-parenting arrangement where the other parent isn't supportive and they're separated or whatever. But I believe you can you can still take a step, as you call it, the hamster wheel. I call it the conveyor belt, which is based on the Pink Floyd, The Wall, all
Okay.
those kids in their school uniforms. I'm going to tell you a quick story and then I'll answer your question. When I was 15 years old, I snuck into that movie to see Pink Floyd, The Wall. I was not allowed to go. I had fake ID. Don't tell anyone. Um, and I was watching this. Now, remember, my dad's a Scottish school teacher. So the Scottish school teacher in Pink Floyd, The Wall is like, stand still, laddie. And it was just like hearing my dad. And I saw all these kids going down this conveyor belt into a meat grinder.
Mhm.
And they stayed. And I, 15 years old, I was like, I'm never going to get on a conveyor belt. I'm never going to be that. And so that was also in the back of my mind. And my Lachlan has a tattoo on the inside of his arm, which is the face of screaming out of Pink Floyd's The Wall, because he believes that I was an unschooler before Dennis brought it to the forefront of my
Yeah.
brain. So anyway, now I've gone and completely forgotten the question, which is typical,
It's
right?
just if you have inspired.
Oh yeah. So yes, I believe that where I was going with that was, let's say worst case, you do put your kids in an organized institution. Um, okay, so they don't get a great grade. So what? So you want to go on a field trip and you're missing class? Boo hoo. Um, it is about stepping, like when you say fiat proof, to me, it's like institution proofing your kid.
Mhm.
I believe very strongly in when you choose to have a child or to give birth, that's on you. That is the real till death do us part. And I've seen way, way, way too many people who are so caught up in their own stuff that they don't understand that uh, person in front of you, they didn't go, I'd like to be born. Can you please take me in?
Yeah.
And maybe you did and adopted them, but you're still responsible for them.
Yeah.
And the work that you put in now is going to pay off in dividends when they get older.
Mhm.
So for me, taking that 5-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old and putting them into a place where they're going to be socialized by other kids with a variety of um, self-discipline, a variety of behaviors.
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to learn from them any more than my husband and I would spend hours with couples who were going through toxic divorces and
Yeah.
fighting with each other all the time. And I'm not saying that all kids who are in formalized institutions are fighting all the time, but just go look on the playground. And so it's about, for me, what I shared with people is their fears were usually like, oh, but I'm going to be so busy and I have to work, or they're going to be under my feet all day. And I'm like, no, because you're going to spend your whole time making lunches, signing papers, volunteering at the school, going in for meetings. It's the same. The workload is shockingly similar,
Yeah.
especially as classrooms become overcrowded, as behavioral issues are on the rise. Why not let them learn from you, because you love yourself, you love your partner, you love the environment you create for them. Why not give them a safe, happy space to just investigate who they are a little bit longer before you let a bunch of 7-year-olds tell them who they are, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah. And the work that, because when you send your kids to school, you have to get them out of bed every morning. You
Yeah,
have to get them out of the door at a
yeah.
certain time. You have
Mhm.
to, deal with their emotional distress, because most kids don't like going to school and they will say, I
Yeah,
don't want to go. Can I stay home? No, you're creating a lot of
yeah,
suppression, and the homework, like you have to
yeah.
make them
Oh,
do
yeah.
it's all this like pressure on you, pressure on the child,
Yes.
all this control. And when you just live with your kids like they're your roommates,
Yeah,
support them when they need you, like be interested in what they do. It's so
yeah.
much easier. People think unschooling is more difficult, but it's so much more easy.
I know. That always shocks me when people say, oh my gosh, good for you. You did such a great job with your kids. You worked really hard. No, I didn't. But they worked really hard because I'm like, mom needs a cup of tea and she's late for her, whatever meeting I'm in. They would go make me a cup of tea. Like it was a
Yeah.
collaboration. But to me, I think you just hit it on the head. If kids don't want to go to school, why?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't send my husband to an institution because I think now he should learn
No.
about retirement
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
health in his 50s.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, both of my kids have never used trigonometry ever,
Mhm.
or and I think, look, if you're fascinated by that world, if and in my unschooling community, we have doctors, we have scientists, they all at some point obviously went to school because they wanted, that was their goal. So they went to university. You can't become a doctor by
Exactly.
unschooling in Canada. But that, to me, that was their choice.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, I want to go. My kids have never been to school, and I can pretty confidently say they never will. But but funnily enough, we have a thing in where I live called Read In Week. And both of my kids, when they were little, would go in and read to the other kids.
No.
So that was their school exposure. They'd be
Yeah.
like, we're going to school today because I'm reading to the kindergarten kids. And they would, because, my younger son was a little bit, of a celebrity. And my older son, my older son was a celebrity. My younger son would go in his cheer uniform and he would, do a little tumbling and then read. And so they thought this was great. And I'm like, remember, this kid couldn't read when he was your age, but I would never say that.
Exactly, exactly. Like my
Yeah.
daughter's 7 and she doesn't know how to read yet. She
Yeah.
loves, books and writing things.
Yeah.
She creates her own books. Like she staples like a bunch of
Yeah. Yeah.
A4 papers together.
Yeah.
Then she tells me what to write. It's like the
Oh,
uh,
that's so great.
rainbow pirate unicorn leopard or something. And
Yeah.
then she
Yeah.
draws underneath. And then she tells me one day the pirate rainbow unicorn leopard walked into a store. So I'm just writing the story and then she does the
Yeah.
drawing underneath. Like,
Yeah.
there is no me saying like, okay, do it yourself, learn how to write because,
Yeah.
it's just so sweet and I love it. She's got tons
Yeah.
of books lying around and we read them to have friends. We read them before
Yeah.
going to bed.
Well,
It's just,
and it's such a collaborative experience that you
yeah,
will see later. You will see when you're my age with these two adult kids who then they start to go, oh, well, oh, you don't want to do that, mama. I'll help you with that. I'll set up your phone. Even though, yeah, I can probably set up my phone, but it's like, oh, remember all those times you read to me or you helped me with this. Like
mm,
it comes back, right?
yeah,
And all too often when our kids are young, we see them as um, society tells us that they're a burden. They tell us that
yeah,
kids are a pain in the ass. They tell us, don't give up your career. Don't give up your autonomy. Don't let them sleep in your bed. Don't
yeah,
breastfeed them. Don't, and it's all about preserving you. Mostly, usually, it's targeted towards women. You need to don't give up anything. Don't sacrifice a thing. You're a feminist. And I'm like, yeah, I am a feminist. And guess what? I chose to be a part of these little people that came into my life. And I choose to be involved with them. I don't see myself as like any less than any other human on the planet. Yes, there are people with way more prestigious jobs than I have because they chose that path and I admire them and I'm not threatened by them, but I certainly don't feel like I'm contributing less to the world.
mm,
And I think that it's so important that somebody is there helping them transition into independent living. And I will also say that as a fairly recent empty nester, I'm so happy for them. I don't sit and cry that they're not here.
yeah,
I'm 50, don't even know, 56 years old. I've still got a lot of fun things to do. We were just in Madeira last Christmas. And I don't feel bad that they're off living their independent lives. And yes, they do call me every day.
Oh,
It might just be for 5 minutes. It might be, hey, I'm getting groceries and I need to be entertained. But usually it's Lachlan. Oh my gosh, did you see what happened with Bitcoin today? Did you see, this? And usually Brendan's calling me to say, I really want to watch this movie, but do you want to watch that with me? Should I wait? So and again, it's not a helicopter like they're calling me to say, should I buy 2-ply or 1-ply toilet paper? But it's just a casual, banter, like as if they were here.
connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so sweet.
So,
I love
mhm.
that. Let me look at the question. And what did you learn about yourself during these years with your kids without them going to school?
Well, because this is being broadcast, I'm not going to tell you what I really learned, because if my husband ever listens to this, I'll never live it down, but I'll whisper it. And then when this comes to the podcast, I'll plug his ears. But I've learned that I'm not always right, and that
Mhm.
my husband sometimes, occasionally, is right. Because I was so not going to homeschool my kids. And I definitely wasn't going to unschool them either. Um, but I think what I learned about myself, honestly, I learned how much I love being a mom
Mhm.
and how good I could be at it, because I was very like, you know, top of my class,
Yeah,
education came easy to me. I was the mover and the shaker. I was, gonna, solve world hunger. I wasn't,
you
and
did
I
well in the
didn't.
society.
Yeah. And so to sit at my end of, not end of life, oh my gosh, to sit at this part of my journey and look at the 20-year-old me and all the things that 20-year-old me said, you're going to do this and you're going to be happy and you're going to be rich and you're going to live in this beautiful condo overlooking Cole Harbor in Vancouver and you're going to have like a great law practice and you're going to be happy. And to look at where we are and laugh, because I'm so happy that none of my dreams came true. And if you would have told 20-year-old me what my life was like now, I'd be like, oh, it's not worth going on. Like, let's just cut right now. And so I think what I learned about myself, and I've had people actually ask me. So I've had my I work with a lot of young 20-year-olds, and they say, how do you live with your choice not to go to law school? How do you live with your choice not to have that career? And I say, well, I'll tell you what, I look at what I have, like, my basket in front of me. And I think, well, what would I take out of the basket to put that in? What? Nothing. There's nothing I would change. There was nothing I would give up. So I learned about the true me and what I really wanted as a person. And I think that I can say the same for my husband. He was also very, driven. And he's just, when he stepped off that conveyor belt, it's just like this pressure just leaves
Yeah.
you, this joy of, yeah, you're right, you guys are going out for a Michelin starred 6-course dinner that we can't go to because we're staying home with our kids watching Star Wars for the 5th time, but we're happy. And every step of the way, I believe that life can be fun most of the time. I really do. And I think spreading that joy with the people you love the most has brought me much greater happiness than any external validation, any title, any amount of riches could have brought us.
Mhm.
To me, this just, I cannot express to you enough being 56, so whatever that means to people, and being able to look back and say this has been a life well lived. I really,
Yeah.
I think that that's the better gift than anything else you think
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah. I mean, you guys seem like a really fun family that I'd love to meet in
Yeah.
person one day. And you
Oh,
seem
you will.
truly happy, not the,
Yeah.
20-year-old and people in their 40s and 50s and 60s, they're still
Yeah.
stuck in that mindset that they
Yeah.
think the car and those dinners and everything will make them happy and
Yeah.
gives them like a little high, a little
Yeah.
happiness for an hour. but then it
Yeah.
goes down there on this conveyor belt or
Yeah.
the hamster wheel, and you found true happiness.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I can still enjoy that dinner. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do that dinner. I
Uh-huh.
love food. And I mean, in Madeira Island, oh my gosh, we had
Yeah.
some amazing dinners when we were there. And of course, that was again talking about your collaboration. So the kids sat down, what are we doing for Christmas? And Lachlan says, we're going to Madeira Island. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Where is this? Oh, it's off the coast of Portugal. Why am I going to Portugal? Brendan had filmed in Portugal. He did a movie that filmed in Sintra. And so I was there for part of the time. My husband was there for part of the time. So we did get to explore Portugal. But Brendan Lachlan was like, we're going to Madeira, and these are the things that we're going to do. So he pretty much planned the whole thing.
Mhm.
Um, and again, so joy, I do recognize the joy that maybe, financial stability can bring you to. But one of the things I just want to hit on, which is so important, I hear a lot of people traveling and doing all these amazing things. And for some people, that's not a possibility, maybe because they haven't discovered Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But, it's not a possibility. But I've seen people do unschooling beautifully in their city, going to the library.
Yeah.
There's so many free and reasonable priced opportunities
Mhm.
for you to experience art. There's so many, the opera, the theater, they all have home subscriptions or theater show. There's maybe you can't afford the professional football game, but there's, other opportunities.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be infinitely wealthy
Mhm.
and travel the planet to have a successful unschooling experience. And that's why I think what you guys are doing there is a wonderful opportunity for people to just be. And I think that's where you have to be happy just being
Mhm.
in order to really enjoy that 6-course Michelin star
Yeah.
dinner.
Exactly. Your happiness doesn't depend on that dinner. You do it
No.
because you enjoy it, but yeah, your happiness
Yeah.
doesn't depend on it.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing conversation. Thank you so much again. Our
You're
time
welcome.
unfortunately is up, but
No problem.
we could continue for another 2 hours
Yeah.
probably. Maybe we'll do another one, or maybe I can interview one of your sons to see what his experience was like. I think a lot
Yeah.
of parents would also listen to that.
Yeah, they would. I'm sure they would definitely be into it. Brendan is always a little more challenging with his team, but
Mhm.
Lachlan, once he gets through Worlds, he's taking a team to the World Championships of cheer. So once he's done that, he'll probably be able to. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in Madeira this summer. So
Oh, great.
you might even get to meet him. Yeah,
Yes, tell them to reach out, please.
I
So
will.
thank you so much, Kathleen. Thank you to
No
all the
problem.
levels. This is our name for our followers. Everybody who likes a place to be and follows us, visit aplacetobe.me. You'll find this on our blog and our podcast. And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.
So everybody have a great day and talk to you soon.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.